Amazing. Thank you. Having bios read is always an interesting experience. I'm like, damn, I didn't need to write all that. Anyway, but I appreciate being here with you all at Boston Ujima Project for Ujima Wednesdays. I'm really grateful to be here. I'm going to quickly share my screen. And can folks see that?
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Awesome. So, welcome again for our session with Ujima Wednesdays. We'll be talking a little bit about Sista Fire, organizing with vision and fire. This will be like a brief intro to some of the work that we do, and excited to be with you all. And we, of course, like to get started with some introductions. Oh, there are things happening that Okay, there we go. So we'd love to go around both the room in person and on the call and quickly have folks say their name, share their pronouns, and name a woman or a non-binary person in your life who inspires you to fight for justice. And so I can start. My name again, Justice Gaines. I use these and zero pronouns. I also use she, her. And one person that always inspires me is my grandmother. She passed when I was very young, but um, she held a very deep faith, and that faith was built on compassion. And so, compassion is one of the uh, deep core reasons why I fight for justice, and her kindness to people is what I stood with, even though I ain't as kind as my grandmother. So just so y'all know, but I do love her. And with that, I don't know if it's easier to just popcorn it on live. Cool. So I will first pass it to. Actually, I'll pass it to Deetra so Deetra can introduce herself because she'll be helping today.
Hey y'all. It's been a long time since I've done a hybrid, so I appreciate y'all in patience. And Dietra Edwards, she, her. And I will say someone who inspires me to fight for justice is actually my nephew, Apollo. I take from Apollo's life the depth of courage he has. He transitioned at a pretty young age, when and really taught us as a family how to stand with our values, our commitment, and I'm just always grateful for his presence in my life, and I'm grateful for all his artwork that often surrounds me. And I don't want to screw up how you say people's names. So, Kam Kamara, Kamaria. I'm sorry, my dyslexia.
Kamaria,
Kamaria, thank you for the
yes,
correction.
Deidre, it's all good. Thank you for trying. My name's Kamaria. I use they, them pronouns. Let me see. There's so many people, um, but I think maybe someone in my life, uh, one of my closest friends, Stokely. Yes, Providence is here. Stokely is someone who inspires me. They're in my collective. Also very kind, a lot more kind than I for sure. Asks really great questions in a way that really helps me just like open the world of possibilities that I wouldn't have before. They ask that question, so they feel like they're like a real world building threshold kind of person. And I am going to I'll pass to uh, Phoebe and Anissa.
Hi, we are both joining together because we're roommates. And let's see what we're supposed to say.
You go first.
Oh, okay. I'm Phoebe, she, her pronouns. And I think someone who inspires me to fight for justice is Anissa because we live together, we provide a lot of support for each other. I really admire so many things about her. Yeah, and I like that I feel like we try very hard to keep each other safe and keep each other healthy. Yeah.
Yeah, my name is Anissa. I use she, they pronouns, and my person who inspires me has got to be Phoebe.
No.
Phoebe said,
I said it first.
Phoebe said we take care of each other a lot, and yeah, it's just I and the way that we take care of each other and also work through conflict kind of gives me hope for relationships that could exist in this world. We will pass it to James.
Hey, um, yeah, I had a lot of folks. But I will say my grandmother, was a big one for me. She, we lived together. She lived here with my mom and my dad, and yeah, she was just like really, she she did what she said she always did what she said she was gonna do, and especially when it came to like me doing well in school and just like fighting for things that matter to me, she's just really supportive of that. And so sort of my first cheerleader. So yeah, I will pass it to Tamashi.
Hi, my name is Tamashi, and I'm a Solidarity member in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and excited that Ujima Wednesdays are back at it, and I hope everyone had a good break. Thanks for calling on me. My person in my life who inspires me to fight for justice, the living one is Nia. And So I really appreciate, was it Phoebe and Anissa? I relate to that quite a bit, to that vibe. Yeah, Nia's really amazing. I think quite a few of you in this room can appreciate that by now, but we've known each other since we were in our early 20s, and everywhere that we've been, everything that I've watched her do with and for others and herself and her family is just always a great inspiration. Um, I have felt especially um, encouraged and inspired to um, love and embrace a complexity of like profound Blackness. Um, everywhere that we've been, like she has an extraordinary capacity for compassion, insight, and liberatory forward thinking, um, and the capacity to hold that we all deserve that. So yeah, I really love her. And then the person who remains in my life but who is no longer in their earthly body is my mother, because I think she would have loved what you all and your peer groups at Ujima, and now I'm getting to learn about Sister Fire. I think all that you all are actualizing is all that my mother wanted for us, and didn't get to see fully on this planet. But I'd like to think that through my eyes and my presence here, she gets to see what you all are up to. Thanks for all the good work.
Okay. Hi, I'm Mary. I use they, them pronouns. I'm on the team at Ujima. A person that inspires my life for justice is my coworker, Ray. If you know them, you know them. If you don't, I hope you get to know them. I'm going to pass it to people in person. Do y'all want to just come up here and speak?
Let's all follow Mary's model because we got to get through this tight agenda.
Hi, everybody. I'm Thara. Hard to match Mary's energy, but I'll try. It's great to be here. Pronouns she, hers, and a person who inspires me for justice is my cousin Bhargavi, who sadly we lost a couple years ago, but was amazing about challenging casteism, challenging patriarchy in our family, and yeah, truly left an incredible legacy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maya. I use she, they pronouns, and someone that inspires me would be my good friend Anna, who has really pushed me through a lot of great conversations about who we are and the privileges we share to really move past and through like a lot of the things that are easy not to notice and start really making meaningful change. And yeah, I'm really happy to be here. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Clara. I use they, she pronouns from the Medford Somerville area. And people who inspire me, I was recently working at a camp with exclusively genderqueer kids. And they're incredible and they inspire me.
Okay, that's it for in person. I'll pass it to Olivia. Yeah.
Hi everyone. Can everybody hear me? Okay, bet. All right. My name's Olivia. Pronoun. Probably a person I would say that I admire would probably be Mary. I always tell Mary all the time. I think they're really cool. I think they're really passionate. I love Mary's mind. So probably, yeah, Mary. The next person I'll choose, I apologize if I say your name wrong, but Ashani.
We can't hear
We
you.
can't hear you, Shoni.
Now?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Shoni. I'm from the Roxbury area. She, her pronouns. It's hard to go fast on a question so deep, but Black women in general inspire me since birth, but mostly my mom. She instilled a sense of fairness in me, and she stood up for everyone, always. Like if we're I remember going to the movie theater with her and her being like, those aren't your seats. They're like someone else for someone else. Like it was always, if she saw injustice in real time, she was standing up. And I think that she gave me that desire to, you know, and her love for Blackness as well. Somebody said that earlier. That was really sweet. But yeah, I'm Shoni. Hi. Are there people to pass it to also? All right, who's left?
Yes, sorry. I'm having trouble like finding my unmute button.
Horrible.
Mona Naima, did you go yet?
No, I can go. Hi. My name is Mona Naima. I use she pronouns, she, her pronouns. My sister, her name is Elizabeth. She is the smartest person I've ever known in my life, and I wouldn't be here without her. She's really, really great. And I think, Nia, have you gone?
I haven't. Thank you, Mona. There's a theme. Family and friends. And I'm gonna continue that theme. So my best friend Tomashi, who's sitting across from me, and my younger sister Yushena, and for same reasons, both incredibly, genuinely, deeply kind, and also courageous at the same time. And I will pass it to Arifa because I don't think Arifa's gone.
Thank you, Nia. I did introduce my name, Arifa, she, her. And a non-binary person who inspires me to fight for justice is my friend Lily, who is a big advocate for chronically ill people and shares a lot of their personal story publicly and kind of takes away some of the shame of people who might be living with chronic illnesses, and also just like highlighting the needs of like people who are like living deep in the margins of society. And that she continues to do that work is really inspiring to me, and I try to do more of it because of her. And I'm not sure if anyone hasn't gone yet.
I think, Olivia, you went, right?
Yeah, I went.
Okay, wonderful. Awesome. Well, thank you all. I do know a deep question takes a little time, so I appreciate all of you and all of the responses and hearing about the wonderful inspirations, both in the room and in your lives. And yes, with that, y'all got a little preview because I keep clicking the wrong button, but we're going to go into a grounding. So again, Sista Fire, we organize women of color and non-binary people of color for our social, political, and economic transformation here in Rhode Island. And we always want to start with a grounding in our spaces to really remind us why we're in space together. And so for today, some of you may have already seen this video, may be familiar with this video, but we're going to listen to this quick clip from Loretta Ross. She is a co-founder of Sister Song and a leader in the reproductive justice movement over many decades. And just let me know if you can hear this video.
Y'all know where the term women of color came from? Who can say that? See, we're bad at transmitting history. In 1977, a group of black women from Washington, D.C. went to the National Women's Conference that Jimmy Carter had given $5 million to have as part of the World Decade for Women. There was a conference in Houston, Texas. This group of black women carried to that conference something called a Black Women's Agenda, because the organizers of the conference, Bella Abdul, Ellie Smil, and what have you, had put together a 3-page minority women's plank in a 200-page document that these black women thought was somewhat inadequate. And so they actually formed a group called Black Women's Agenda to come there in Houston with a black women's plan of action that they wanted the delegates to vote to substitute for the minority plank that was in the proposed plan of action. Well, a funny thing happened in Houston. When they took the Black Women's Agenda to Houston, then all the rest of the minority women of color wanted to be included in the Black Women's Agenda. Okay, well, they agreed, except that you could no longer call it the Black Women's Agenda. And it was in those negotiations in Houston the term women of color was created. Okay, and they didn't see it as a biological designation. You're born Asian, you're born black, you're born African American, whatever. It is a solidarity definition, a commitment to work in collaboration with other oppressed women of color who have been minoritized. Now, what's happened, you know, in the 30 years since then is that people see it as biology now. You know, like, okay, and people are saying, I don't want to be defined as a woman of color. I am black. I am Asian American. Well, that's fine. But why are you reducing a political designation to a biological destiny? That's what white supremacy wants you to do. You know, and I think it's a setback when we disintegrate as people of color, you know, around primitive ethnic claiming. You know, yes, we are Asian American, Native American, whatever, but the point is when you choose to work with other people who are minoritized by oppression, you have lifted yourself out of that basic identity into another political being, another political space. And unfortunately, so many times people of color hear the term people of color from other white people that they think white people created it, instead of understanding that we self-named ourselves this. This is a term that has a lot of power for us, but we've done a poor-ass job of communicating that history so that people understand that power.
Thank y'all for listening to that. Someone in the chat did mention that they couldn't hear it. Did anyone else have any issues hearing it? And I'll drop the link if I'm able to find it in the chat, just so folks can also try to listen to it on their own time. But as a sort of summary, what Loretta Ross is talking about is the history of the term woman of color actually came out of the women's conference and the Black women agenda that Black women brought to that conference, and that other minority women wanted to join that agenda, and in doing so, uplifted other issues, but also created a solidarity around what it meant to be minority women at the time, and created the term women of color as a political a political notion, as a political identity of being in solidarity across our races. And so reflecting on that, reflecting on what you heard Loretta Ross talk about, I wanted to sort of get some responses to this question here. What does understanding women of color as a political term, not as a biological term, but as a political term, mean for building power in Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities? What do y'all think?
I can jump in. This is also our first Ujima Wednesday from a break, so I understand maybe we're still warming up in the space. And so the first thing I thought of, Justice, when you shared this clip was understanding, having some ground of history of like acts of solidarity, and that being something like really important to hold on to as folks consider building. Like there is momentum, there is ground. And so I'm thinking about that if we hold on to these like origins of terms, then we also get to hold on to or push back on like the constant erasure of movement history, especially Black and Brown movement history in this country.
Ooh, thank you, Kamaria. That is a big thing, right? A lot of our terms often get misused once they become mainstream. So I appreciate that too. How do we hold our history? Nia in the chat makes me think about expanded possibility in thinking about the who and like the who of who we're organizing. Maybe one more comment if anyone has one or a reflection. Go ahead, Tamashi. No worries.
We're in the same place and Zoom doesn't yet merge audio for whoever's nearby. So I'm not on the audio, so it's not to create feedback in the room and for here. Sorry about that. I'm quickly trying to look it up. When did the women's conference happen? I've been hearing things about this historic gathering in other moments, but I don't. I think you said Carter. Yeah, so this is like,
Oh, I should have had that open because I forgot the exact date. I believe it was the 80s. Is that correct? No.
Carter did it because we were suffering through Reagan through the 80s. It had to be the late 70s. I'm sorry, I should know this.
75. Thank you, Dietrich.
75. Okay. So this makes I immediately think about the world, the domestic and larger world in which a gathering like that is happening, because it never happened again. I can't remember what I was listening to or watching when it was referred to. It never happened again. And it was a really, really big deal. I immediately thought, well, I'll be damned. Even that came from a gathering of Black women. That was my first thought. It might be kind of cynical because my immediate like knee slapper was Black women getting together on for an agenda, other people feeling that vibe, creating another term, and then that term in the future ends up used against Black women, or like used in ways that don't that distance that allow people to distance themselves from the plight of Black women and for mutual advocacy of Black women. Yeah, I immediately thought about the term women of color. I now feel compelled to resist that term myself, in acknowledgement that there are non-Black people of color who align themselves with white supremacy at our expense today. So that's immediately, I kind of cynically thought of that. So I appreciate that as you continued to talk about the history of what happened, that it was, or that she talked about it. Yeah, that there was something really positive happening, and that it was an act of political solidarity. It's just, I guess maybe my brain is cooked from what we're all going through. Like it's hard for me to picture authenticity around that now, honestly. Is that?
I hear you.
Am I even making sense? Am I just like,
yes, you are. I can say when I first heard the term personal color many, many years ago, I didn't like the term, right? Because I was like, I prefer colored person if y'all just gonna call me colored anyway, right? But learning the history was a big thing, right? And I think what Kamaria said about how are we holding history, right? So a lot of our terms get misused. A lot of our terms that come out of movement end up getting mainstreamed and misused. But the reason I wanted to start here is because it's critical that as we're talking about Sista Fire's work, when we say women of color and non-binary people of color, we mean it in terms of political solidarity. We don't solely mean it as an identifier or as a replacement for diversity or minority. We mean it as an act of political solidarity between Black, Latin, Indigenous, Asian, especially Southeast Asian women and non-binary people who are rooted in Rhode Island. And so for us, having that understanding that this came out of Black feminism, that this came out of movement, is actually very critical for us to understand what it means for our work, building with women of color and non-binary people of color. And so who is Sista Fire? Sista Fire, our mission, as y'all heard before, is that we've been cultivating an intergenerational base of women and non-binary people of color rooted in Rhode Island to build our collective power for social, economic, and political liberation. Sista Fires existed since about 2017 when Ditra and our other co-founder, Chanravi Prang, founded the organization to really invest in the leadership of women of color in a very historically white state. Rhode Island, for those of you who aren't familiar with Rhode Island, is deeply colonial and has very entrenched power systems in which women of color, especially Black women, especially Southeast Asian women, are not even seen within the space unless they're performing very particular whiteness or upholding very particular ways of whiteness. And so also understanding these terms as political terms, we have a deep commitment to organizing. And so that means we value community wisdom and knowledge. We value the self-determination of our communities. We value people power. We're not here just trying to build individual leaders. We're trying to build collective power. And that also means we trust and invest in shared leadership. And so all of these are really central to how we do our work and the methodologies you'll hear about later of how we are building up power and investing in the leadership and the vision of women of color and non-binary people of color. We're also rooted in a Black feminist praxis. So this means, for those who don't know, it's in the tradition of Ella Baker and the tradition of the Combahee River Collective. We believe organizing is for those who are directly impacted by the issues we work on, and those who are directly impacted by these issues are the ones leading us in how we do the work. And we also refuse to separate our racial, cultural, and gender identities. I am a Black trans woman. None of those identities are separate, even though I can give you specifics about maybe each of those identities, right, distinctly. The way this plays into Sista Fire's work is because a lot of our work actually comes directly from our base. That includes our first big campaign. So our first big campaign, which is currently wrapping up, is called our Black Maternal Health Campaign. And the way this came about was that as Sista Fire was first getting started, those first 2 years or two, folks were already starting to share their birthing stories with Sista Fire. And in particular, Rhode Island context matters, right? We have one primary birthing hospital called Women and Infants Hospital. And the more folks were sharing, the more we found out just how many awful stories Black women had in that hospital. And then in January 2019, a Black woman named LaShonda Hazard passed. She had been going to the hospital. She was sent home with complications. She came back and her baby died in the hospital because she was not listened to. And so after that, our members elevated this issue as something central for Sista Fire to work on. Sista Fire did more work to continue collecting stories, to push the hospital to change its policy and cultural practice, and to support birth workers and doulas of color around the state, passing legislation to make sure that they can get funded. But it really was the voices of our members, the voices of our base that pushed and made sure that issue was going to be a central campaign, even when Sista Fire was a baby and wasn't really sure what it was getting into yet, right? And that's critical to how we've done our work. And even though it's called a Black maternal health campaign, there is a lot of women of color and also non-binary parents who were included in that campaign and who came together to support that act of solidarity, because we know what Black maternal health rates look like, not only nationwide, but specifically in our state of Rhode Island. Another example of how our base tends to move our work is that Sista Fire didn't start for women and non-binary people of color, but our own members were having their own journeys of gender. They were having their own political understandings. And so there was a push to be like, okay, the work that we're doing includes non-binary people, and we should be explicit about that. And Sista Fire put in a lot of work to learn what that would mean. And we're still continuing a process of what does it mean to hold space for women of color and non-binary people of color, our differing and our shared values, and what does our identity look like to hold both of those things in a country that's constantly trying to wedge between cis women, trans women, and non-binary people. Right? And just at the bottom here, a quote that I love that really, I think, Dietrich synthesized is, "Liberation is not a distant dream. It is ours to claim, and we are claiming it now." And that's how Sista Fire moves. So with that, we want to talk a little bit about gender, race, and power. And so in pairs, and whoever is on the back end of tech, if you can help with doing some, setting up some breakout rooms for pairs. And in the main space and at Shirley Eustace house, if y'all can figure out pairs, you want to ask this question. What is your relationship to power? When have you held power, and what did it feel like? And after you answer that for a little bit, for a few minutes, also think in this conversation, how does your gender and race influence your relationship to power? And I'm gonna give y'all 5 minutes. Oh, you'd rather not break out, but it's okay. You're multitasking. I hear you. I hear you. And you know, we're kind of pressed for time, so we could essentially do this large group, but I would like folks to get a little bit of conversation. So maybe we'll break for about 3-4 minutes and then come back and then continue. And if tech folks can let me know. Ooh. Wonderful. Thank you.
Nia, I put you and Tamashi in the same room. Because y'all are in the same room.
Okay, so I think we'll both just choose not now because we're both multitasking.
For sure. All right.
Thank you.
And so I can start and share a little bit of what Olivia and I talked about. Just that, like, sometimes power is a little hard, especially with Black women. We don't always want to hold power because we know how it's been wielded against us. We know how it's felt being used on us. And sometimes holding it or using it can also feel strange. It can feel unright in our body because often it's related to privilege or oppression, or like that's often how we're subjected to power. And at the same time, when Black women are in positions of power, often we're under a higher level of scrutiny. We're under a higher level of criticism for how we use or hold that power. So that's something that came up for us. Can I hear maybe 1 or 2 folks share? Mari's resonating with that.
Yes, come here. Yes. We have someone in person.
Amazing.
Hi, everybody. My name is Maya. My relationship to power, when have you held power, and what did it feel like? I spoke to my participant about my relationship to power, and I feel like I didn't realize my power as a Black woman until people tried to like revoke it from me. And I think that sometimes when it comes to especially women of color, like power is associated with like aggression, versus like other counterparts. It's kind of like their power, they'll consider it strategic. So I really didn't realize like the power that I had until people tried to make me believe their opinions of me. But yeah, that's my perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, Maya. Anyone else before? Oh, go ahead.
I'm down to go. I didn't have a partner, but I did reflect on the question, and I actually interpreted it as power, like as if I were exerting power on over someone else when I was like thinking about it. So, like I wrote down that I have privileges, and so that has given me power to move the society in a certain way that maybe someone who doesn't have my privileges has. Um, I didn't really think about it as like my own personal power, which feels more pure, I guess. I wasn't really thinking in that direction. And then my gender and race, how does it influence my relationship to power? I thought about this one more positively, and I thought about how being a woman, I'm disarming, right? Or even if I'm presenting, I'm disarming. I'm not. People don't see me as a threat. And then my race, being able to maneuver different facets of society that maybe someone who wasn't a Black woman could. Like I think about traveling to like I want to see Colombia, let's say. Like I imagine that I won't be treated like a rich American, and that maybe I can get the local food more easily, or maybe not so. I don't know. So those are the ways that I interpreted the question.
Thank you, Ashani. No, I appreciate that. I think both what you and Maya said also speaks to two things, right? One is it speaks to this piece of often we're talking about power or we're thinking about it immediately in either how it's used on us or how it's being taken away from us, but we don't always consider our own. And for folks who have been to or seen much earlier sessions of this Ujima Wednesdays Power series, we know that there's different types of power. There's power over, and there's also power with, right? And so, oops. So when we're thinking about power, and when we're thinking about how we navigate it as women of color, as non-binary people of color, where we have our own lenses, we have to learn how to navigate power in different ways based on our identities and our situations and based on our experiences and our privilege and our societal positions. But we also have a lot of power, not only within ourselves, creatively, socially, but we have a lot of power together. And counteracting some of this individualistic relationship that capitalism makes us feel towards power, right, is partly recognizing that a lot of our greatest strength is actually when we combine our powers together as people, when we stand in solidarity across our cultural backgrounds, across our gender experiences, and when we really start to move not only in solidarity, but in collective and shared leadership. And so that's ultimately what Sista Fire looks to do. How are we building our collective power by building upon our individual stories, by building upon our individual experiences, and seeing all of the ways that we both share and hold power together, and can navigate the system for transformation, not just to get little crumbs, but to actually shift the system entirely. And so these are just some pictures from various events. Right here in the middle, I'll just say one of the questions that we've collected, particularly over the summers of, I believe, 2019 through 2022, 2023. One of those questions was, what does a strong quality of life look like? And here the answer is, quality of life would look like being financially stable to do what you love and have what you need. And I'd hope we can all agree with that. And so quickly, I'm going to move us through some of this quickly so that we can have time for questions. But methodologies we use to build power and build solidarity across our cultural, ethnic, and gender experiences are really starting with the person. So we always believe it's important to go back to who we are as people, especially as we named that we have a lot of relationships to power and to these structures that are violent or that are trying to take away our agency. For women of color and non-binary people of color, we are always trying to find ways at Sista Fire to make sure folks feel in their agency. So one thing we do always is we set our containers. We always consider what does it mean to make sure folks can be in this space? How can they feel grounded? How do we share meals like folks are at Eustace House? I'm kind of jealous. How do we have childcare? Because if we're organizing with mothers and parents, if we're organizing families, then we need to make sure that families can access the space. We also always start with stories. We share lots of stories, we collect stories, we encourage people to share their stories. And if we had more time, I'd be having y'all share a whole lot more stories. But you get to come to a Sista Fire event if you want, and we'll make sure it will happen there. We also lean into liberatory somatics. So what does it mean to really not only be in our minds, in our hearts, but also be back in our bodies and recultivate relationships of healing and in truth with our bodies, no matter where they're at. We have elders, we have folks with chronic disabilities. Our members come from a wide range of experiences, and we want to continue to heal those relationships with our bodies in the way that we can and not ignore them while we're doing this work. We've also done collective altar building on multiple occasions. In this left corner, that's actually an altar we did last year at a family march for Palestine. And we did it right on the gate of a children's museum that was taking money from a war company, a weapons company. And folks wrote letters and put flowers on it to honor the lost children in Gaza. And then another set of our methodologies is built around how do we include folks directly in our work. So popular education is a framework we use often. This is about making sure directly impacted people not only can tell their own stories, but that learning is always a two-way street. The way we often say it in like a brief community agreement is that none of us know everything, but together we know a lot. And so what does it mean to really think of the knowledge coming from our base, not just the knowledge folks are trying to instill on our base? Our women of color, non-binary people of color, especially working class folks, are always being told what they need to know, but they already have a lot of wisdom and experience because they are the ones experiencing the conditions that we're trying to change. And so what does it mean for us as those who are experiencing the conditions to be teachers and learn from each other and learn together? We also do a lot of participatory action research. Come next week if you want to learn more about this, but participatory action research is how we've collected a lot of data. It's directly connected to our storytelling and story sharing, and it is how we've shifted a lot in the state, I will say. Deetra will talk more about this next week, but the state's been looking to us, and Deetra's good because she's made sure they paid for it, about the data we've collected on our base's conditions around economics and housing and debt. And what does that look like when our people are also not only doing the research, but getting the research back? How can this be a collective, reciprocal, and mutual process? We've done a lot of mutual aid, especially during the pandemic, and continued since then to support our base in handling their direct needs, the direct conditions that are facing us. And we invest deeply in leadership development, both politically and skills around organizing. And then finally, we build campaigns. We talked a little bit about the Black Maternal Health Campaign. Sista Fire is also moving into a campaign to build an agenda for a regenerative economy over the next few years. And we also believe in building movement. So we host two different groups. One, we host the Doulas of Color Network, which came out of the Black Maternal Health Campaign to support birth workers of color connecting. And the past 2 years, we've been leading the Dyke and Trans People of Color March after the original organizers asked us to hold it because they was like, we volunteering, we tired, please help do this. And that also helps us build our community with other queer women of color and non-binary and trans folks of color in our state as well. And so right before we move to questions, and feel free to start asking questions in the chat as well, we just wanted to talk about some challenges around what it means to build solidarity with women of color, with non-binary people of color. And some of this, and thank you. Deetra also shared our final report from the Black Maternal Health Campaign. Oops. Okay. or I mean, no, this is not the report from the panel. This is our story of Sista Fire. And I shouldn't have pressed that button because I don't really know how the sharing screen works, but I think I'm going to find it again. Perfect. So some challenges is one, building shared culture takes a lot of intention, a lot of willingness, and a lot of consistency. Having folks in a space sharing their stories and trying to build collective leadership means the intergenerational challenges are going to come up. The intercultural misalignment is going to come up. And there's no quick fixes to these, but it is worth working through if we are going to fight towards liberation together. Another thing is that solidarity requires commitment to really unlearning these internalized systems of sexism, racism, classism, ableism, misogyny, and transphobia, which is not inherent to most of our cultures, actually, but it is a cultivated social norm that a lot of folks in our community have. So how are we working to make sure we're holding the issues that trans folks face and create an environment where non-binary folks can be in space with cis women and create an environment where cis women can also learn and unlearn some of these things too without feeling necessarily shamed for it. Because again, these are not things that our community grew up with or generated, but they are things our community deals with. And we're creating a learning environment, not just a judgment environment. Sharing our stories can also bring up traumas, which is why we have to craft our spaces with care. And you know, sometimes that doesn't work for timing because those deeper questions take longer to answer, as we saw earlier. And then some specific challenges for Sista Fire being in Rhode Island is there's a lack of a big organizing and movement infrastructure there. And generally for our people in these times are fucking hard, excuse my language. And we're under attack from fascism, from capitalism, from xenophobia, from transphobia. And so it's really hard to organize in this moment because folks' conditions are and basic needs are not always being met, which is why mutual aid and collective healing spaces become so critical. And so this was just a brief introduction to Sista Fire, the ways we do our work. And so appreciate you all and appreciate you, Ujima, and happy to answer any questions that have come up from folks.
Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, Sista Fire.
Thank you.
I also know we do have 2 minutes left in our workshop time allotted, so I know some staff or folks may have to hop off in a little bit, but if y'all are able to stay on to answer some questions, that would be great. I know I can stay on. But yes, let's open it up to some questions. Anybody in person have questions?
Well, I turn a light on now that it got dark.
Okay, we can, anybody virtually have questions while folks in person are chewing on their thoughts? Oh, Tamasha, you look ready.
Hi again. Thank you for this great presentation, and I'm glad that it's not the last one. There's so much that you all are covering in the realms of wellness for your base in Providence. Are the arts and humanities a part of your advocacy priorities for your base there?
Ooh, I love that. And I'm going to try to answer that question with the question in the chat as well, or what are some of the ways we cultivate spaces with care? So one, yes, art has been a huge piece. We try to work with artists whenever we can. Many of our both staff and our members are artists or have creative practices in some ways. So we've done a lot of art within the spaces we've built. We've done specific, we call it soft fires, where we've had our artists come in and help cultivate space. And we've also thought about this as organizing tools, right? So last year we played with Theater of the Oppressed, thinking about how we can use theater as a way to not only do political education, but do data collection around story sharing and really think about what does it mean to integrate the creative processes of artists, because for us, we see artists as culture makers, culture bearers. And so the healing, this lineage of healing requires us to engage art and requires us to be creative, and include our culture bearers in the work that we're doing to build liberation. Then cultivating spaces with care. There's a lot of ways we have to do it, right? And it's kind of also something that we're always learning how to do better. So one is we always try to have food and grounding and childcare, interpretation, when we know folks will need it. We're always trying to make the space more accessible, and we're continuing to work in that process to make our space as accessible as possible. We also know that hard things come up. So we try to have decompression moments. Those somatics really come into place where we're doing breathing exercises or body exercises. There was literally one of our justice circles, which is our monthly meetings, first and third Thursdays. I mean, sorry, wow. I went to Prov Slam, my poetry brain hit. Third Mondays of the month, third Mondays of the month is our Justice Circles, which is our general membership meeting, and also a space for folks who are interested in sort of joining. That can be a space to join. But there was a Justice Circle where I came in, I had to facilitate a tail end section, and y'all, I was not in a place to do it like at all. But one of our members actually led a practice that was based in their Chinese cultural tradition that was literally about moving energy in the body. And that just moved the energy right out my body. Like I was like, right, it was really powerful. And so one of the things too that we often do is trying to bring and make sure there's space for folks to bring their cultural and ancestral technologies into our space. Our peoples knew lots of things before capitalism decided what technology meant. And so how can we continue to bring our cultures into this space as not only healing, but as also solidarity building?
Can I just add this, that
Yes, please.
one, that it's been the intention from the beginning of knowing, just in doing movement work, that there's so much just from release and the need for release and understanding. So as an organization, we use particular, and when you read the report, you'll see more of this, like from the basic thing, what is a circle? Why are we holding space with a circle? What types of containers are we creating? How are we using cultural practice? But it also became that in the beginning, it was very much left to me to figure out. And so we had to spend time cultivating with our membership, like you all do, right? Like, what does it mean for us to do this work collectively? And how do you each put into this? And how do we begin to synthesize and build an understanding of what we have already that exists within our membership? So understanding the role, the different skills and experiences people have to help us put this in. We have a member who came up in Sista Fire, and we created a position just around what does healing and care mean, and how is someone helping hold that container. How we had a time where collectively we read together about healing lineages, and what does that mean, and how do we start to integrate those practices into how we do our work? And it's not separate, everything is integrated. You know, we also look back on tradition. One of the things we do, and probably one of the most favorite things we do now, is that we sing together. We didn't sing together before, and and when staff go away, they're like, and I think, Nia, you know this, I was recording. Nia and I was in this cohort together. I was like, okay, sing into my phone because I'm bringing this back. Um, we start, wherever I go, if someone starts singing, I record the song, like, let's figure out this song. And we have at least one staff person who sometimes works with other people to sing with us. But singing has been critical. Poetry has been critical. There's a ton of poets within Sista Fire. Um, and for folks who are figuring out their own types of practices, what does it mean for this to be integrated? And I know y'all are there with the design studio. We spend a lot of time at this design studio. You know, I've been on the board at the design studio since the beginning, and we create what we call liberated spaces, right? Like we're not waiting for that destination to show up. We're trying to live it right now. And what does it mean to hold a liberated space? And how do we integrate the politic of who we are into the liberation, into the care, into the practice? And so those things aren't separate entities, but integrated entities into how we do our work.